There's one key hire that adds anywhere from 20 to 100K per month to my clients' businesses, and in fact this hire is so important that usually whenever I come in to scale a new info product business, this is the first or one of the first hires that I'll make. And that's because when this hire comes into your business, they usually take 15 minutes or less per day to manage, and they'll generate a 20 to 30x return on the time you spend managing them and on what you pay them. I've implemented this single hire into 6- and 7-figure businesses selling information, coaching, courses online, and every time there is an instant ROI. And if you sell a product online that costs over $2,000, involves sales calls, and if you have at least a few thousand warm leads, or if you get at least 30 to 40 new leads per day, and if you're currently looking to scale your business and add at least 20 to 100K per month to what you're currently doing, I highly suggest you watch this video in full and then take what I'm saying, implement it, because if you implement what I'm about to share with you, you can literally transform your business within a week. Because when I started bringing in this single hire into the businesses that I'm currently working with and scaling, that's exactly what happened. This one hire is someone who's usually called an outbound dialer, and even if you already have one, the problem is it's 2025 and it's not getting any easier to get through to your leads. Leads come unqualified and broke. It's harder to book sales calls. People don't show up. People randomly cancel. They tell you they're going to reschedule, but they don't. Maybe all you're doing in your sales process right now is sending emails and you've noticed your conversion rates dropping or just not performing at all. Or maybe you're sending both emails and text messages as part of your sales process, but you're noticing less people are replying. You see, the problem is you could be a genius marketer, you could have a genius sales process, but it's not getting any easier to get through to your leads. So if you want to increase your conversion rate from lead to customer, you need to book more calls. You need to have more conversations. You need to increase your show up rate. And for that, you need to bring in a person who actually calls and dials up your leads. Because when you do, you'll literally start making more money out of thin air. You're gonna start making more on the leads you already have just by bringing this single hire into your business. And bringing this person in comes down to 3 simple steps. So the first thing is, before anything, start collecting phone numbers if you aren't already. The dialer is going to be able to call new leads. The dialer is going to follow up with leads from the past. And for all of this, you obviously need phone numbers. The dialer is going to take care of reschedules. They're going to call people who book a call to confirm them onto the call. They're going to call people before their sales call to confirm that they're going to show up, not cancel, not have to reschedule. They're going to establish that human touch point. And what the dialer can also do is qualify your leads and also pre-sell them onto your process, onto the mechanism and solution you sell before the lead even shows up to the sales call. This can all be done through someone who dials up your leads and has live conversations with them over the phone. Because you have to understand the main metric you need to focus on in your funnel, or at least one of them, is getting as many people as possible to reply and respond to what you're sending them, right? So that means getting people to reply through email, through text messages. In this case, we're talking about a dialer, because one of the biggest points of getting a dialer is to get through to the people who didn't reply to your email, the people who didn't reply to your text message. Your reply rate and your response rate is at the very top of your funnel. So what this means is, if you get more people to respond, you're going to have more conversations. If you have more conversations, you're going to book more calls. The more calls you have, the more people show up to sales calls, right? The more sales calls you have, the more closed deals there are, and the more money goes into your pocket. And having a dialer just opens up another pathway for you to get more leads at the very top of your funnel. But at the same time, you can do things at the back of your funnel to increase your show up rate, to follow up with leads, to make sure leads are showing up to the call, right? Because the dialer can call those people and confirm with them that they are. Now, for this to obviously happen, you need to find an actual A-player dialer. So where do you get dialers? How do you get them? How do you hire them? Now, I actually made an entire different video that breaks down this process in depth, but just to run through it, there's 3 main places that I like to get my dialers for the companies that I'm currently scaling, right? The first place is sales trainers. The number one reason I go to sales trainers is because the students, the dialers in this case, they're receiving training in real time from the sales trainers. So this means that there's less micromanagement that you need to do. There's less training that you need to do because the sales trainers are doing it for you. Now, at the same time, usually if you hire from a sales trainer, it's going to involve a placement fee. So this is not a free way of getting a dialer, but it's one of the most proven ways, because usually you can get a solid A player depending on who you hire from. There's also some bad actors that are going to place, people who've never spoken on the phone. So there's things to look out for. Now, the second way you can hire a dialer who's an A player is from Facebook groups. And this is definitely not the easiest way to go about things, but this is definitely a way to do it. And it's more of a volume-based approach, breaking down what the dialer role is going to entail. And then you actually have candidates apply for a form to work with you. And I'm going to actually go into what happens after here in a second, but there's a third way of hiring, and that's through Indeed or Upwork. Now, personally, this is not a way that I always do. Mostly I go through sales trainers as well as Facebook groups. I find that to be the easier path. However, you can go on Indeed and Upwork and you can find some talented people on there as well. Now, what happens when you actually hire someone? Well, there's step 2. The second step when you're hiring someone is to actually qualify them and make sure they're not a C player, they're not a B player, because those are the worst people you can hire. You need to make sure they're an A player who's going to generate an ROI on the time you spend managing them and what you pay them. And by the way, we're going to get into the commission structure and pay structure for dialers as well. But the way you qualify these people is by qualifying them on two main things. The first one will be their experience. So are they experienced? Do they have previous experience dialing or previous training for dialing? And the second thing you're qualifying them on is competence, right? So with competence, there's two things that I like to do. The first one is critical thinking. They literally take an IQ test to make sure they have the critical thinking to speak to people. They have the critical thinking to understand how to manage a CRM, how to go about managing leads. And this is very important. And usually with these IQ tests, we aim for a minimum of 105 points on that test, which is just above average. And I've noticed after hiring literally dozens of dialers, that's an indication of them being an A player. Now, the second thing is an English test. If you're hiring dialers, especially from a Facebook group where it's a volume-based approach, you need to be able to see they can actually speak English and not only write English, but also understand it. And that's what you can do with this free English test here. It's on efset.org, and this is what I give to every single dialer that gets hired to make sure they're competent in their language skills. And also, with language being a priority for someone who speaks to leads on the phone, you need to make sure they don't have an accent. So usually in the actual application form or qualifying someone and texting a dialer back and forth, I'm gonna have them send some voice notes, or I'm gonna ask them straight up if they have an accent, right? And if they don't have an English or an American accent, that usually means they're not the best fit for a dialing role, because when they call people, there's not gonna be that instant familiarity. And you don't want people to pick up the phone and think that they're talking to someone who's about to scam them. And usually if they don't have an American or an English accent, they are instantly disqualified from the dialing position. Now that doesn't mean they can't serve a VA role or they can't serve a DM setting role, but they're not a good fit for dialing, as we want to create familiarity, right? When someone picks up the phone, we need to think that they're speaking to someone alike to them, right? So if you're in the American market, it would be a dialer with an American accent. If you're in the UK market, it would be a dialer with an English or a Scottish accent, and so on and so forth. With actual experience, what we qualify is what they've done in the past, right? And this is done through the actual application. This is what the application could look like, just some basic information, right? And as you can see, the English test, the critical thinking test. And the other thing we qualify is we make them send a loom. This is another place where you can tell if they have an accent, and you can also see if they're being truthful and honest about their actual experience, because they have to record that in a loom. And there's usually a few questions that we make them answer through that loom, just like this here. You can pause the video and see this here. Now, the next thing will be to actually train up your dialers. Now, this is why if you aren't experienced in sales, I suggest you hire from a sales coach, because depending on the sales coach, if it's a good sales coach that you hire from, a good sales program, a lot of the times they can take care of training that dialer. Because the way it works is the dialer paid that coach for training, paid that coach to help them land a role. So when they land a role with you, that coach has a responsibility to help that dialer succeed. At the same time, you can get a dialer and then have a sales program for them to go through. Now, the next thing you need to give a dialer, this hire that comes in, is a actual process, a script, right? Something they can follow. And usually there's gonna be a specific script for every single step in the pipeline in terms of like who the dialer calls, right? So usually the way the script is gonna be framed is there's gonna be an intro, there's gonna be a discovery of the current situation, a breakdown in that dialing script of what you do, who you are for some familiarity and context, financial and time qualification, right? So they're not booking broke people onto sales calls with your closers that are gonna waste your time. You're gonna qualify for their goals, why they're doing this in the first place, as well as why now, right? Why are they committed to this now? Why is it so important for them to commit to making this change, whatever you sell, investing in themselves at this current moment? And then the last thing would be breaking down what you do. And this could kind of be like a short pitch, or it could be a longer pitch, depending on how much you want to pre-sell them and pre-frame them before the call in terms of what you do and how you could potentially help them. Now, it's very important that your actual script is congruent with whatever marketing you're doing through organic or ads. It needs to be congruent with the angles you're taking in your content, in your marketing, and that's very, very important to do. So there's that familiarity and context whenever someone shows up and picks up the phone with the dialer. Now, once the dialer has a script, it's very important that they have the right channel to call people, right? So something I like to personally use is dialer.io, and I like to use it for a few reasons, and I'm not affiliated with them. I personally do use them, but the first reason is it's an easy CRM. So when a dialer comes into dialer.io, inside of the software, all the dialer has to do is just click a button and it's gonna dial the required lists. And it's literally like a game, right? They're basically signed into a session, they're just dialing people, and it just goes person by person. They don't have to do any manual work. All they focus on is talking to people, right? And one thing you can also do inside of dialer.io is you can have different lists depending on who the person is gonna be calling and which stage in the pipeline the leads are, right? So you can have a list for call confirmations that you want the dialer to confirm and make sure that someone's showing up to the sales call the next day. You can have new leads, a list with new leads who just opted in and became a part of your funnel. You can have a follow-up list, and all the dialer has to do is just click a button and they're talking to these people. The second thing with Dialer.io is the speed to lead. There's extremely fast speed to lead with Dialer.io, and when you have a dialer in a session, they're literally being fed new leads as they come in, right? So as they're dialing, whenever there's a new lead, that pops up and the dialer is able to speak to them. Now, the other thing is the pickup rate. Dialer.io has a great pickup rate, and another reason for that is the number held. So Dialer.io, it rotates numbers, and because of that, they have higher number held than, let's say, Go High Level, where you're gonna call people and your number is gonna show up as spam and no one's gonna pick up your phone calls. Now, once the dialer starts making dials, starts booking calls, you start making sales from their efforts, how do you actually pay them, right? So there's a few ways that I like to pay people, and I actually did make another video on this on how you can pay your sales team, how you can pay your setters, your dialers specifically. But usually I like to do some sort of system where it's a 3-zone system, right? So depending on how much they're booking or how many sales they're making, they're getting a certain commission percentage, and this way they're incentivized to do more, right? So you have bonus structures as well, where, for example, if you book X amount of calls, you're gonna get X amount of extra commission, or if there's an X amount of extra sales from the calls and effort that you've put in dialing people, then you're gonna have an additional bonus commission. And I mean, it's quite simple. One more thing that I would like to add in with dialers specifically is some sort of base, and this base can be a conditional base or it can be a preset base. But the way I like to personally do it is having a base at a certain level. So that means, for example, with one of my clients, it's gonna be at 6 sales. So whenever there's 6 sales that come in from a dialer's efforts, they're going to get their base unlocked, plus obviously all of the commissions and other bonuses that are a part of their pay system. And you can watch a more in-depth video breaking this down and how you can do this for your own team. Now, the last thing I'll say about bringing in this hire, actually retaining them long-term and how you can do that. So when a dialer is onboarded, your goal should be to do everything in your power for their success, right? I recommend doing daily conversations or calls, so you can text with them, or you can just jump on a quick FaceTime call, quick Zoom call with them. It's very important that you, if you're the face of the brand, or if you're managing, someone's offer and there's a face of the brand, it's very important that that person also jumps on calls with the dialers at least like once, twice per week, because you have to understand, these dialers are selling an offer, but they're also selling a brand. Like, they're selling people and they're booking people onto sales calls, and they sell them on working with you. They sell them on your brand. They sell them on you, right? So you need to also sell these dialers. You need to sell them onto working with you. Just like they sell customers that come in and work with you, you need to sell the dialers onto working with you and in your business. You need to sell them on the vision and hype them up so they keep working with you long term. Dialers are a huge part of my client's success. In fact, I used to be a dialer myself 2 years ago, and I know that the companies that I dialed for, that I was phone setting for, wouldn't have done the same amount of revenue and cash collection that they've done if they didn't have me and a few of the other dialers on their team. Just DM setters alone don't cut it. Just sales calls, straight from a booking page, don't cut it. You need to be able to establish these human touch points with people. You need to be able to get through to them and speak to them on the phone. And that's exactly what dialers do, and that's exactly what they can do for you. And they're very, very easy to onboard into your business. They have an extremely high ROI on their efforts, and they're gonna be crucial to helping you scale. If you need any help finding a dialer, placing a dialer, you can DM me on Instagram. But more specifically, when you need help scaling your coaching business, scaling your course business, scaling your info product, shoot me a DM on Instagram, link down below. If you need any more specifics on how you can actually hire these people, where you can find them, or how to pay them and how to structure that, how to manage them, you can watch these 2 videos. I'll link them as well. And that's pretty much it. If you have a takeaway from this video, get a dialer if you don't have one yet. If you already have one, watch these 2 videos to better manage them, better incentivize them with a correct pay structure so that you can actually scale that dialing team and scale your business in the process.